There is a wedding happening right now in a small town in Vermont, and almost nobody in that town knows the groom's real last name. The guests think he is a farmhand named Nate. His own bride found out the truth only 3 weeks ago, and she still has not decided if she can forgive him for lying to her for an entire year. To understand how a man worth $400 million ended up milking cows for $11 an hour, and why the woman he loved almost walked away from him forever, we have to go back 12 months, to the night he disappeared from his own life. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Nathan Cole was 29 years old, and he had never once had to wonder how he would pay rent. His father, Richard Cole, had built Cole Enterprises into one of the largest agricultural land and real estate holding companies in the northeastern United States. Nathan had grown up in a 9-bedroom house outside Boston, gone to a private boarding school in Connecticut, and graduated from a university where half his classmates were also the children of people you had heard of. By the time our story begins, Nathan was set to take over as CEO within the year. His father was retiring. The board had already approved the transition. On paper, Nathan had the life that most people spend their whole lives chasing. But something in him had gone quiet a long time ago, and he could not explain it to anyone who had not felt it too. He had been engaged once 2 years earlier to a woman named Vanessa Prout, the daughter of a hedge fund manager his father golfed with. The engagement lasted 4 months. Nathan called it off after he overheard Vanessa on the phone with her sister, laughing about how she would never actually have to work again once the wedding happened. She was not being cruel. She was being honest. That was the part that stayed with him. After that, Nathan started noticing something he could not unsee. Every woman his father's friends introduced him to already knew his net worth before they knew his middle name. Every conversation at every gala circled back, eventually, to Cole Enterprises. He began to wonder if there was a single person left in his life who would want him if he had nothing at all. Have you ever wondered if the people around you actually like you, or if they like what you can give them? Nathan wondered that every single day, and it was slowly eating him alive. Nathan's mother, Diane Cole, had died when he was 19. She had not come from money. She met Richard Cole when she was working as a receptionist at a construction firm he was building an office for, long before Cole Enterprises became what it is today. Diane never fully adjusted to wealth, and she used to tell Nathan something he never forgot. She told him that a bank account can buy attention, but it cannot buy loyalty. She told him that the only way to know if someone loves you is to take away everything they could possibly want from you and see if they stay. Nathan was 19 when she said that. He did not understand it then. He understood it completely 10 years later, sitting alone in a house with 14 rooms he never used. 6 weeks before his father's retirement announcement, Nathan made a decision that he told no one except one person, a longtime family employee named Walter Higgins, who had worked as the estate's property manager since Nathan was a child, and who Nathan trusted the way most people trust a parent. Nathan told Walter he was going to disappear for a year, not to a resort, not to a private island. He was going to go somewhere nobody knew his face, take a job with his hands, and find out if a real life could still find him. Walter thought it was reckless, he said so directly, but he also understood better than almost anyone why Nathan needed to do it. Walter helped him build a new identity on paper, a modest background, a work history that would hold up if anyone checked, and a name. Nathan Cole would disappear. Nate Hartley would take his place. Nate Hartley arrived in the town of Millbrook, Vermont, population just under 3,000 people, on a Tuesday morning in late April, driving a 15-year-old pickup truck he had bought with cash under a false name. He had 2 duffel bags, $600, and a phone with no contacts saved except one, an emergency number for Walter that he swore he would only use if something went seriously wrong. He rented a single room above a hardware store from a landlord who did not ask many questions as long as the rent was on time. He took a job at Hanson Family Dairy Farm, a working farm just outside town that had put up a hand-painted sign at the general store looking for seasonal help. The pay was $11 an hour. Nathan had spent more than that on a single cup of coffee without thinking twice. The first week nearly broke him. His hands blistered from the fence work. He did not know how to operate half the equipment. An older farmhand named Roy laughed at him more than once for not knowing which end of a shovel did the digging. Nathan, now Nate, said nothing back. He just kept showing up. For the first time in his life, people were not being careful around him. A gas station clerk shortchanged him and did not apologize when he caught it. A neighbor down the road complained loudly about seasonal help who don't know a thing. Nobody was performing for him. Nobody wanted anything from him except honest work, because that was all he appeared to have to offer. If everything you own disappeared tomorrow, who in your life would still show up for you? That is the exact question Nathan was forced to live inside of every single day in Millbrook. The farm belonged to a woman named Carol Hanson and her daughter, Emily. Carol had run it since her husband, Dale, passed away 6 years earlier from a heart condition that the family still did not fully talk about. Emily was 27, and she had put her own life on hold to keep the farm running and to help raise her younger brother, Tyler, who was 16 and still grieving their father in ways he did not have words for yet. Emily was not looking for romance. She barely had time to sleep. Between the farm's finances, her mother's arthritis flaring up more each winter, and Tyler's grades slipping at school, Emily's days started before sunrise and rarely ended before 10 at night. People in town called her beautiful, and she was, but she had stopped thinking about it the way most people had stopped thinking about her at all beyond what she could do for them. Nate's first real conversation with Emily did not go well. He accidentally left a gate open on his second day, and 6 cows wandered halfway down the county road before anyone noticed. Emily was furious. She told him flatly that if it happened again, he would not have a job. Nate apologized, but something in her tone irritated him, and he said, without thinking, that he was doing his best. Emily's response was short. She said his best was not good enough for the farm to survive on and walked away. Neither of them thought much of the other after that. But over the following weeks, something started to shift slowly, the way most real things do. There was no single moment where Nate fell for Emily. It happened across dozens of small, unremarkable mornings. It happened the day she stayed up past midnight helping him figure out a broken tractor part by flashlight, not because she had to, but because she did not like leaving a job half-finished. It happened during the town's small summer fair, when Emily won a pie-eating contest she had entered as a joke and laughed so hard she nearly fell off the picnic bench, and Nate realized he had never once heard that laugh performed for an audience or a camera. He noticed how she paid the Whitmore family's grocery bill without telling anyone, after Mr. Whitmore lost his job at the mill. He noticed she never mentioned it again, not even when Nate brought it up carefully weeks later. She simply said that people help people and changed the subject. Emily, for her part, noticed things about Nate too. He never complained, even when the work was brutal. He was oddly well-spoken for someone who claimed to have grown up on a struggling farm in Ohio, though she chalked it up to him just being thoughtful. He asked good questions. He listened, really listened, in a way most men she had dated in high school never had. One evening in late July, after a long day fixing a collapsed section of fence in the rain, Emily sat down next to Nate on the porch steps, exhausted, and said something he would replay in his mind for months afterward. She said that she used to dream about leaving Millbrook, seeing a city, maybe even traveling somewhere warm. But she said the dream felt smaller now, because the people she loved needed her here, and she had made peace with a life that was hard but honest. Nate did not tell her that he had spent his entire adult life surrounded by people chasing exactly the kind of escape she had just given up. and that watching her let it go without bitterness was the most remarkable thing he had witnessed in years. Do you know someone like Emily, someone who gives up their own dreams quietly without ever asking for credit? Think about that person for a second. Maybe they deserve a phone call from you today. In late August, something happened that Nathan did not orchestrate, though he would later be accused of exactly that. A storm knocked out power across the county for 4 days. The Hanson Farms refrigeration failed, threatening to spoil nearly 2 weeks of milk production, which for a small operation like theirs could mean the difference between staying open through winter and shutting down for good. Nate spent 36 hours awake, driving to 3 different counties to rent a generator large enough to keep the cooling systems running, paying for it with cash he was not supposed to have easy access to as a farmhand earning $11 an hour. When Emily asked where he got the money, he told her he had savings from before, which was technically true, though he left out several $100 million worth of context. Emily did not push. She was too exhausted and too grateful, but her mother, Carol, who missed very little, quietly filed the moment away. Carol had grown up poor herself, and she knew what real financial desperation looked like, and what it looked like when someone was hiding something instead. She did not say anything to Emily yet. She decided to watch. Around this same time, a man named Gary Whitfield, a wealthy landowner from 2 towns over who had been trying for over a year to buy the Hanson Farms water rights and expand his own operation, renewed his pursuit of Emily, this time more aggressively. Gary had money, an established name in the county, and no interest in taking no for an answer gracefully. Emily had already turned him down twice. After the storm, sensing an opening while the farm was financially strained, Gary made Carol an offer to buy the land outright, framing it as a favor. Carol did not want to sell. Neither did Emily. But the numbers were getting harder to ignore, and Gary made it clear, in the polite but pointed way wealthy men in small towns often do, that if Emily reconsidered his interest in her personally, favorable terms could certainly be arranged for the farm as well. Emily was disgusted, but she also understood with a heaviness in her chest that her family's survival might soon depend on decisions she did not want to make. She told Nate about it one night, not asking for help, just needing someone to hear it. Nate listened, and something in him hardened. He could have ended the entire problem with a single phone call to his father's law firm. Instead, he did something smaller and, in hindsight, more dangerous. He began quietly reaching out to agricultural cooperatives and small business grant programs under the Hartley name, using knowledge from his real life without revealing where that knowledge came from, trying to find Carol a legitimate way to keep the farm without Gary's involvement. Gary Whitfield, however, was not a man who liked being outmaneuvered by a farmhand. He hired a private investigator, initially just to look into whether Nate had a criminal record worth exposing to Emily. What the investigator found instead was far bigger than anyone expected. Nate Hartley did not exist before 11 months ago. There was no birth certificate under that name in Ohio. There was no employment history beyond a single reference that led back to a property management company controlled, several layers removed, by Cole Enterprises. Gary did not fully understand what he had found yet, but he understood it was a weapon, and he decided exactly how and when he wanted to use it. In early September, at a small gathering at the Hanson farm to thank neighbors who had helped during the storm, Emily said something to Nate, quietly, while they stood near the barn away from the noise of the party. She told him that she had almost said yes to a wealthy man once, years ago, someone from a neighboring county, and had turned him down because something about him felt hollow. She said she could never marry someone who looked down on ordinary people, someone who saw farms and small towns as things to be pitied or bought. She said she was grateful the man in front of her was not like that. She said it with complete sincerity, having no idea that the man she was speaking to controlled more land across 3 states than every farm in that county combined. Nate smiled, and it was the saddest smile he had given in a year, because he knew exactly what he was hiding from her, and for the first time the lie felt less like protection and more like betrayal. He almost told her right there. He opened his mouth, and then Tyler called Emily over to help with something, and the moment passed. It would be the last quiet moment they had before everything came apart. 3 days later, Gary Whitfield showed up at the farm, not with an offer this time, but with a folder. He handed it to Carol first, in front of Emily, in front of half a dozen neighbors who had stopped by for the weekly farmers market setup. Inside was everything the investigator had found: photographs, financial filings, a single clear image of Nathan Cole standing next to his father at a Cole Enterprises shareholder event 18 months earlier, wearing a suit that cost more than the farm's monthly operating budget. Gary said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, that Emily had been played by a rich man's son pretending to be poor, and that everyone should ask themselves why a Cole heir would need to lie his way onto a working dairy farm, unless he was up to something far worse than anyone realized. Emily did not scream. She did not cry, not at first. She just stood very still, holding the folder, looking at a photograph of a man who looked exactly like Nate and nothing like the person she thought she knew. She asked him directly, in front of everyone, if it was true. Nate did not lie again. He said yes. He said his real name was Nathan Cole. He said he had come to Millbrook to find out if anyone could love him without knowing what he had, and that somewhere along the way, that plan had turned into loving her, and that part had never once been a lie, even if everything around it was. Emily walked away without another word. Carol did not stop her. If someone you loved had hidden something this significant from you for a year, even with a reason behind it, could you forgive them? Sit with that question for a moment, because Emily had to sit with it for 3 long weeks. Nathan did not chase her. He wanted to every single day, but Walter, who flew in once the story started circulating locally, told him plainly that Emily deserved space to be angry without an audience, without pressure, and without a wealthy man's instinct to fix things by throwing resources at them. For the first time in his adult life, Nathan had to sit with a problem he could not solve with money, and it was the hardest thing he had ever done. Emily spent those 3 weeks doing what she always did, working the farm, caring for her mother, worrying about Tyler, except now she was also unraveling a year of memories, trying to figure out which parts had been real. She replayed the storm, the generator, the late nights fixing fences, the way he listened when she talked about her father. None of those moments, she realized slowly, required a false name. He had done all of it as himself, even while wearing someone else's identity. Carol, who had suspected something for months, told Emily something one evening that mattered more than anything else said during those 3 weeks. She said that people are not only the facts about them. She said Dale, Emily's father, had made mistakes too, plenty of them, and that the marriage had survived not because it was perfect, but because the love underneath the mistakes had been real. She told Emily that only Emily could decide if what she had with Nate was real too. But that fear of being fooled again was different from actual proof that she had been. Nathan came back to the farm on a Sunday morning in early October, not in a suit, not with lawyers, wearing the same worn jacket he had worn all year. He did not bring a ring. He told Emily, standing in the same spot near the barn where she had once told him what kind of man she could never love, that he was not there to convince her of anything. He said he had already resigned from taking over Cole Enterprises, effective that week, and had arranged instead to run a smaller division focused on rural agricultural investment, a job that would let him stay in Vermont if she ever wanted him to. He said he was not asking her to marry a Cole. He said he was asking if the version of him she had spent a year getting to know, blistered hands and all, was someone she could still choose, now that she knew everything else about him too. He told her the choice was entirely hers, and that whatever she decided, he was done disappearing in either direction. Emily did not answer right away. She thought about her father, about her mother's words, about 11 months of mornings that had felt more honest than almost anything else in her life. She thought about the fact that the man standing in front of her had learned to fix a tractor, muck a barn, and sit quietly with grief he did not fully explain, none of which a person fakes for a year just to win a bet. She said yes, not to the name Cole and not despite it, but to the man who had shown up day after day, blistered and imperfect and finally, completely honest. The wedding, months later, was small, held at the farm itself rather than at any Cole family property. Roy, the farmhand who once laughed at Nathan for not knowing which end of a shovel did the digging, stood as a groomsman. Carol cried through most of it. Tyler, now 17, gave a short toast that made almost everyone laugh and then almost everyone cry. Nathan used part of his own resources, quietly and without press coverage, to set up a fund supporting small dairy farms across the county, facing the kind of financial strain the Hansons had nearly lost everything to. Gary Whitfield's attempt to expand into the county's water rights fell apart entirely once several farms banded together with the fund's support, though Nathan made sure that particular outcome was never framed publicly as revenge, because Emily asked him not to make it about that. Emily still runs the farm. Nathan still shows up before sunrise most mornings, though these days everyone in Millbrook knows exactly who he is, and it no longer changes how he is treated there, because by the time the truth came out, the town had already decided who he was based on a year of actual behavior, not a name on a folder. Nathan Cole spent nearly 30 years surrounded by people who knew his net worth before they knew anything true about him. It took becoming someone with nothing to finally be seen as someone worth loving for exactly who he was. Emily Hanson almost lost that love to a lie, but what saved it in the end was not a grand gesture or a fortune. It was a year of small, unglamorous, honest mornings that no amount of money could have faked. So here is a question worth sitting with long after this video ends. If everything you had were taken away tomorrow, your title, your money, your reputation, would the people in your life still choose you? And just as importantly, are you loving the people around you for who they actually are or for what they can offer you? Nathan Cole had to disappear for a year to find out. Most of us will never have to go that far to ask ourselves the same question. If this story moved you, tell us in the comments how you would have reacted in Emily's place. Would you have forgiven him? And if you are new here, subscribe so you never miss the next story.